Hey there, everybody. After a very expensive summer for me personally, also doing less work because it's summertime, so I don't have as much teaching, I'm finally back to where I can afford to do some retailer grab bag videos again, which is probably one of my favorite things to do for this channel. So this month I've cycled back. I've had two from Partner and Son, and this is my second box now from Menachem at Escape Pod Comics. So we're gonna open this up and see what Menachem sent me. I said you have up to like $100-ish that you can send me stuff that I need to know about that I haven't read yet. And Menachem has obviously lost his mind and has decorated this box. No, this is awesome. He sent me Penguins randomly housed box. This is quite a bit like getting packages. My favorite uncle when I was a kid, who unfortunately passed too soon, used to send us boxes and cards, and it would have writing all over it like this and puns and things. So thank you, Menachem. This reminds me quite a bit of my Uncle Randy. Um, Warning, contains comics. Great comic box. So let's see. Last time I got stuff from Menachem, it was all really good stuff, and he introduced me. The standout of that batch was Gareth Brooks's work, who I've gone on to grab everything I can of Gareth's. And Menachem also always packs in some like loose floppies that got damaged or things that he's given away for free. So this is cool. The Amazing Spider-Man #6. With the cover by Scotty Young. We sat with Scotty Young at the Eisner Awards, actually. That was fun. He was a really cool dude. Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. I enjoyed this show. This was a good show. So I look forward to reading this. I wonder if this is like the collected early stuff. Yeah, I've read some of that. That's cool. Radiant Red. I've seen Radiant Black. I like this artist. Is that David La Fuente? We Have Demons. Greg Capullo. That's always good. Some Greg Capullo. My favorite. His stuff on Spawn. That was my jam. Jonathan Case. Little Monarchs. This looks good. This looks YA appropriate, maybe, too. Does this have a Junior Library Guild? Yeah, YA appropriate. And then Rick Veitch, which is probably, Rick Veitch's Bong comics is probably not YA appropriate. This is how you know Menachem's going to hook you up with some good variety, too. Oh, Shibote. Alone. This is something I've been looking at. Yeah, I'm excited for this. This is one that's been on my kind of lust list that I didn't get for myself. Recidivist by Zach Sally. This looks like #4. I really like the format. And this metallic ink. Oh, okay. Yeah, that looks cool. Barbaric. Here's how Menachem packs his books when you get them. Looks like cool art too. Grip of the Combinat by Simon. Oh, Simon Roy. Okay, that's gonna be good too. And Damon Gentry. Simon Roy, one of the artists off Brandon Graham's run on Prophet. Doesn't look like he's doing the art on this. Maybe he's just writing. Enjoy the art on this too. Okay, cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go read these, and then I will return with reviews of all of them. Before we jump into reviewing the books, I want to give a little bit of an explanation for what this game that I'm playing is, if people haven't seen one of these videos before. What I try and do as I have money is once a month, if I can afford it, I'll send $100-ish, I'll give a budget of $100-ish to 2 different retailers. This month we're doing Escape Pod Comics, Menachem Lukens up in Huntington, New York, and I also do Partners and Sons in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because they both have a really good pulse on the industry and kind of in different areas. So I say send me stuff, mostly that you think I'll like, but also they're starting to learn my taste. That's kind of the game we're playing, is to see if these retailers can really learn my taste and hone in on it. But also knowing that there's things that I'm not necessarily going to like, but that deserve exposure. and that this will help expose some things. So they'll send me some of those as well. So when I do these reviews, I give a numerical value of 1 to 10. That's not a judgment of the quality of the book. What that is me communicating to the retailer how excited I was about receiving that book, that I spent my money on it and it's going to stay on my shelf, you know. So that's what the 1 to 10 is. There's plenty of things that just aren't for me that will be a 10 for someone else, or they have a really good function within the industry. So I don't want people to think about these numerical values as that. It's me communicating to these retailers what I do and don't like, and this ongoing game of can they match my taste, but also knowing that they have permission to send me things even if they know I'm not going to like it, because they know that other people are going to like it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first 3 books. These were my these are all right books. This is Bong Comics by Rick Veitch, the legendary Rick Veitch, putting this out under his own Sun Comics. I believe this stuff is all print on demand on Amazon, which I'll talk about at the end of the book. But here it says the bong effect, and it describes how smoking weed, I assume, if you smoke the bong, yeah, medical marijuana, will enhance the experience of reading this comic. So who am I to deny Rich Veitch's demands? So we are going to read and review this book under the influence. So this is a collection of Veitch's like self-published underground work over the years. He says in the introduction that, of course, there's a lot of other stuff that is in print in other formats or other collections, but these are like a lot of short stories that are collected. So some of it's like not super enjoyable to me as a read because it's very rough, but as a totality of seeing like artist development and artist history, especially an artist as important as Rich Veitch, that's a lot of fun. And the stories obviously is he improves as an artist, get better. Veitch has a lot of stuff that I really like. I particularly like his political satire. So Army at Love, I think, is maybe my favorite thing by him. But anyways, it starts off just with, it looks like him and his brother just doing these funny underground comics. These are 1968 that they're doing these. So some cool experimental stuff here, but it's just like a mouse and some, yeah, ancient guru going around. Anytime Tom Veitch is involved, there's like this obsession with pits and holes. I noticed that as I was reading it. Like, here's this big, I don't know, it's just like a ass and mouth on either side with the stomach in the middle. He seems very interested in this pits and holes. So that shows up in that story. I noted happily that they just have a sound effect that said Bjork, who's, you know, the singer, is one of my favorite musicians, and obviously in 1968. I don't know when Bjork was born, but definitely wasn't a hit pop star at that point. So that was fun to see. And then we get to some stuff where he's at the Kubert School, so going into the 70s, where you can see his skills develop really, really rapidly. Here's a cool drawing by Veitch and Bissett, probably when they were graduating Kubert School. I don't know what year they graduated, but it's fun to see Veitch's skills improve really rapidly under the tutoring that he was getting. Like this, I believe, is him and his brother still before he got to the Kubert School. So you can see his compositional powers increasing quite a bit, which I think is, you know, like that's good that was his original base. Also just some funny, kind of not quite a formalism, but funny little, well, I guess it is a formalism here where it looks like the guy's filleting himself, and then it's just he's sucking the marrow out of the bone. So playing with the idea of closure a little bit, or the assumptions that the audience is going to make. It's all like sophisticated stuff for someone just kind of going it on their own. And some of the compositions in these sections are just really showing that he's playful. Then when we get to this story, The Visitation, all of a sudden it looks like really professional. Like the lettering was always good, but now it's like that super professional, almost computer precise Rick Veitch lettering that you're used to. Lots of amazing effects with the ink. Again, really interesting compositional ideas in terms of panels, flow, or just good compositions in general. But the surface finish is still kind of funky. Um, then there's this this other story that's like a H.P. Lovecraft story. You can see Veach gets into Lovecraft and like creepy and eerie and is telling those type of stories. So he goes down into the basement and sees Nixon leading to some orgy again with the pit, and then you have this character has to go down and eat out a very large woman. Just that whole thing is like, ooh, I don't know. It's interesting to see him bring together like the real underground vibes, like the sexual deviant with more of like the creepy, eerie type of polish to it. I think that's something that Veach brought to the table was that the segue between those things. Then you just get this horrific Lovecraftian entity here that he's drawn, and you really get to see his skills improving. Then you get a couple collaborations with Steve Bissette. This one, the Telltale Fart. You can tell that these guys were just goofing around and having fun. This is probably for an assignment for the Kubert School. Who knows? But again, it's just like super raunchy in the way that you would expect, like totally unhinged, like you would expect from the underground. I mean, just like really explicit drawings of this, his wife getting fatter and fatter and like shitting on him with every fart. And then there's this one here, which is a parody. Oh no, I didn't understand what this one was really. Um, I got that he was bringing all of these other characters into it, like Popeye and stuff, but I couldn't follow the story on this one. But this one, you get that really, this is starting to look like the Rick Beach I know in terms of the almost Will Eisner like brushwork and things. So that's coming together there, and then you see him starting to play with materials. So almost like he must have been looking at Richard Corbin or something, and then doing interesting things with sign language and the word balloon. So that's 79. And that sense of like, now that he's really got his skills mastered, he's not being like, okay, I'm comfortable, I'm a good cartoonist now. He's like constantly pushing, which is something I associate with Veach. Some mini comic that he did that didn't really land with me. Another collaboration with Bissette. And then you get like this really cool painted collaged work. This is now in the 80s, some of the underground stuff that he's doing still. So these really interesting, like sticking a photo on a photocopier and dragging it, or like blurring the face. All these painted airbrushed effects. None of this is computer done, I don't think. I mean, it kind of looks like it, but all hand done stuff. So again, relentless experimentation. Here's a parody of Peanuts, where it's just like, what if Charlie Brown was older, but it's kind of all the same gags. This one here really interested me. A Touch of Vinyl. The story's creepy as hell. It's just about this guy and his vinyl sex doll, but the way it's made, I mean, it feels super 90s. It feels like they took photographs and then pixelated them, like half toned them, but like with Microsoft Paint or something. Like the pixels are really far apart, and you can see like the little staggered printer patterns. So I'm curious about how this one was made, but going with the idea of like this kind of plastic life, it makes the experiment with the medium makes sense to me. And then there's also just like it is all photographs, so I'm just thinking like, I don't know who this is posing, but it's just all very awkward. It makes the thing way more creepy. And then here we have a really gross story about Donald Duck thinking about all of the dirty things he would do to Daffy Duck. I don't know. This was a collaboration with Harvey Pekar. Harvey Pekar's one of the few people who somehow pulls off diary comics that I generally like. Not all of them, but he seems to always be able to like have like a poem or like a little moral at the end or something that lands. And then I guess this is appropriate that the newest one in the book, this was done in 2020, is my favorite one. And it again, it's nice to see the evolution. I think this should be encouraging for anyone who's still, trying to improve. Starting with someone whose work looked like this, just kind of a, chaotic, cartoony mess, to someone, I mean, who's like one of the top in the game. That's really cool to see over the course of this book. This story itself is something I've worried about quite a bit. It's about when we finally get our eyes replaced with retinal implants, and augmented reality, virtual reality has just popped over top of everything. And how that sounds like a dream. The world could be whatever we want it to be, but the potential for that to get hacked is really high. And like there's a scene here where he's got this beautiful, virtual girl, and someone hacks her, and she's all of a sudden like this old crone. So I really like that. I think that's a nice little, pre critique of the metaverse, that we should all be thinking about what that's going to be, how much we want it, what we need it to be. So I really really enjoyed this piece. It almost makes me want to talk to Rick Veitch about the AI. He seems such a like a curious experimenter with any kind of tools for comics. Like here, this like digital background he's got. I feel like he's probably already out there messing with these AIs and doing something interesting with it. So I'm gonna have to follow up on that more. And then there was just these like door hangers that you're obviously supposed to hang on a different type of knob. So I thought that was funny too. I really like the cartooning on that. So overall, yeah, it's a good book. I really like having it. There's stuff that about it that's really uncomfortable to me too. Just like these couple stories here are really uncomfortable just having them around the house. But um, I like it. I'm glad I got it, and I'm glad I got to see that kind of progression of Rick Veitch, and a lot of different approaches. Now like my biggest thing, well, not my biggest thing. There's lots of other factors. Like this is still a good book, but I'm super critical of how things are printed. This is the second Rick Veitch thing that I've got from Menachem, and the content's always good in the books, but either the way he's preparing his art is just like, please, Mr. Veitch, watch Sean's videos, um, or it's, I think that his stuff is printed on demand by Amazon, and so it's just super shoddy. Like it's all halftone, so everything's rendered with dots, and even a big juicy line like this, which shouldn't suffer much from the halftones, you can still see the visible dots around it. I mean, and this isn't me getting up close either. It's just like from a distance, you can see dots everywhere, and on the finer lines, like things break down into where it's not a line. It's just a visible series of dots. So I just don't know. Like it obviously has access to good resources, and everything seems well prepared and well adjusted. So I think it's just this Amazon print on demand, which I get why he's doing that as a self publisher. There's no up front, but it's just a bit sad to me that, like, someone as legendary as Rick Veitch doing such compelling work still. Like this is totally compelling work to me. It's a bit sad that like that's kind of what he has to resort to. I don't know. So that's my biggest qualm about. There's a lot of stuff I want to get from Rick Veitch, but I'm always like, it's just not going to look very good, and that's a bit off-putting to me. So it's a bit hard, I'm balancing that in when I'm thinking about if I had to rank this. Like Rick Veitch's stuff is always good, it's always compelling. This was a fun, like bit of history, I think, as well. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, maybe a 6 or a 7 for me. Just A, because of that like anthology format. It's not like every story landed, and then B, that print quality is just kind of difficult for me, so it holds it back from being the best thing it could be. Okay, Miss Marvel, the kind of intro to the Kamala Khan character. pretty. Even though this is definitely not a book that I would ever choose to buy on my own. I've just finished watching the TV series, so I'm glad that Menachem sent it along. I think this is one of the ones that he sent along, not a damage. He said they were getting 6 books, so I'm gonna review it. He might have just thrown it in there because it was a damage, though. I don't know. But anyways, I was excited to read this because I found the TV show both enjoyable and frustrating, as with most of the MCU stuff lately. But with the TV show, I really enjoyed the first couple episodes that were like a Nickelodeon show, or kind of have that Scott Pilgrim vibe with like the graphics, and I don't know, it just felt like it stylistically, which is what Marvel does so good. They kind of they put the genres all together and mix them up. It felt like a Nickelodeon kids show or something like that. And then it veered off into this like really serious path with all this time travel bullshit, with her going and meeting her grandma on this train in some historical event that I don't know, like that. And then it just turned into a Marvel thing with genies, and I don't know. The show started to get too serious for its own good, and where it excelled was as a goofy kids show, that was about a girl struggling with her heritage and her identity, and that's, I think, in this book done better than on the TV show. It doesn't have all that Nickelodeon kids stuff, which I really liked from the show, but the focus on kind of just goofy, having fun, focusing on her struggle with it. Like she's raised by, parents from Pakistan, and they're Muslim by religion, but this is obviously a girl who's American. She grew up in America, and she has an ethnic heritage, but she's pushing against that. In the TV show, it felt a little bit stranger. It felt a little bit more forced, that aspect of her identity. It's like wanting to maintain 100% like traditional Muslim values, but then also having these moments where it's like, but feminism. They just didn't sit well together in the show. In this, her struggle is more there on the top, I think, and more like singular to her as a character. It just didn't feel politicized the way it did in the TV show, and I appreciate that. That's combined with what I think is a really fun art by, let's see, I'm going to butcher the artist's name. This is written by G. Willow Wilson, and Adrian Alphona is the main artist. Jake Wyatt does 2 issues, and is particularly good for those because Wolverine shows up. But Adrian Alphona, I really like. It's like this really, really thin line work, so relying a lot on the colorist. But there's just some really strange, almost like Sam Keithy type of moments with her powers, making her hands get bigger and smaller and things like that. So I really like that. And then he also does some like really wild, like, shapes and characters on his, like, the dad just looks like a big, like, Barney the dinosaur penis creature to me, and I think that's kind of funny. And there's other characters throughout who have these really strange proportions and stuff, so I like that. But this right here was the indication to me about why I liked the identity stuff in this better. Right here she says, everybody's expecting Miss Marvel, a real superhero with perfect hair and big boots, not Kamala Khan from Jersey City. And in the show, they use a similar line to that, but they say, not a brown girl from Jersey City. And, politics aside, like, philosophically, I'm an individualist. And I'm always skeptical when people are forced to, like, identify by whatever box they check on administrative form. I've dealt with administrative stuff in my career too much to know that administrative box you check is not there to help make sure that more Pakistani Muslims get aid. It's there to box you in. And so I really like here that she's Kamala Khan. She's an individual. That individual happens to be from a Muslim family who came from Pakistan, and that is part of her life. But she's also Kamala Khan, like the kid that grew up in America that has friends. And so for her to say that, I think, I don't know, this book just has more heart in it. It doesn't have that, like, glossed over, here's the message that we're supposed to be saying right now. And that's that one moment, the difference between those two things is really powerful to me. there's charming stuff in both. Like, I love her running around with her fanny pack, and there's stuff like that in the show. She's got her cosplay stuff on, or her like bike helmet, and those are kind of fun. I do, I do really kind of lament the fact that in the TV show they didn't have her being a shapeshifter. I think with that fun like Nickelodeon type of style, because she's not just a shapeshifter that can make herself bigger. Like, she straight up turns into a couch at some point in here, and she turns into other people. Which in the show, it's just this like crappy light effects. The kind of goofiness and the humor that's in the first couple episodes of the show could have been really ramped up with this shapeshifter play, and I don't know. I think that was a missed opportunity as well. This moment here is another moment that's different in the comics and the show, where he explains, her dad explains to her why he named her Kamala, and here he says Kamala means perfection in Arabic. And in the show, they basically say, I think they say perfection, but then they go on to also add the translation, oh, you're a marvel, which is different. It seems like they're shoehorning it in. So I don't know. I don't speak the language. I don't know if it can be interpreted both ways, but I feel like if it could legitimately be interpreted that way, then G. Willow Wilson would have written that in there. As you know, G. Willow Wilson, as a creator, obviously comes from a Muslim background. I don't know if she's Pakistani Muslim, but I'm assuming she knows Arabic well enough to get the translation right. So that just makes me wonder, like, if the show was just really stretching. No pun intended, given her stretchy powers, but it just seemed like another one where they were forcing to make things work. Oh, that's why she can also be called Miss Marvel. It's from her birthright, her name. I don't know. It just felt forced. Whereas in here, like, it's just like, oh, she's a fan, and that. I mean, that's in the show too, but it's played up. And then the goofiness of like having a giant cockatiel as the bad guy. This is the bad guy. Like that. I don't know. I just feel like that would have been so much better in the show than this whole like genie things. And then just, yeah, here she is like in as a couch, like just stuff like that's fun. Like if you're gonna do that, lean into it. I also like that the book plays a little bit more with the conflict of like traditional values and respecting the boundaries of the traditional values of your culture that you were raised in, but also that individuality, seeking out your individuality, and especially the culture clash of like, look, you're in America now and you're being assimilated. As much as we want to pretend that we're this big melting pot, like you get stewed in the melting pot and you get assimilated, and you can fight to you can fight to preserve your culture as much as you want, but you're gonna have all the temptations of the iPhone and stuff. And I like this where he says, do whatever you do with the qualities befitting an upright young woman: courage, strength, honesty, compassion, and self-respect. And that like drives at, kind of the more universal things that we would hope of people, and so that she has to like struggle against those virtues of a more traditional value set is interesting in the book, and that's in the show too, but I just feel like it's better in the book. It's really fun to see her. I think her meeting Wolverine is my favorite part of the book. Wolverine always works really good with kids. I guess I feel like I'm a grumpy old guy who just wants to be a hermit too, but I work with youth for a living, and so I identify with Wolverine. Like always having all these like young little sidekicks who, by the end of the day, I'm ready to get away from, but I love them all and I want to help them. So I like that. There's just a lot of fun in here. And then here they're talking about getting old and things hurt pretty bad, and they're expanding that to like just life and society in general, not just your knees. And Wolverine says, oh well, the pain's got to go somewhere, and she says, I don't want to believe that, and he counters with, well, you're young, you just don't know. And there is some of that to like this youthful push against tradition, is like, you just don't know yet. You haven't grown up, and the adults can tell you that all you want, but you just won't know until you're like 40. So I try not to tell things like that to my students, because it's like, whatever, age and brain chemistry is going to change, and life situation is going to change. So I like that that's built into the writing. It's not totally one-sided. The plot of the book is like this cockatiel guy is gonna not kidnap all the kids, but he's gonna convince the kids that the only way that they're gonna be useful is to turn themselves into batteries, like go into the matrix and turn themselves into batteries. Um, and she gives a little speech here about like that's not saving the world, it's just admitting the world is over, and that her generation needs to do more than just passively give up and become batteries. So I like that little speech as well. That's cool. So I like it. It's a good book. It really made me wish that the show had done the book more justice. I feel like the first two episodes were kind of cool, but the rest of the show was a pretty big disappointment. Probably that and the Winter Soldier one were by far my least favorite of the Marvel show so far, and I see a lot more in here that would have fit the format that they had better. So it's cool to read the book on that sense. In terms of just like pure enjoyment of it, or is this something that I really want for myself? Like, no, I'd rate it. When I do my ratings, it's like it's not the quality of the thing, but more how much do I want it in my collection. I put it at like a 5 or maybe a 6. It's like pretty good for the type of thing it is. But that doesn't mean that I don't like it, in the sense, like I said at the beginning, this is the kind of thing that in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, when I was talking to people, friends that cared about the industry and were looking for a way forward, like this is what we were looking for. Like stuff, it's in this little tankobon size. A kid can go pick it up. It's got a young female character. She's coming from a different background. She becomes relatable to more people. Like that's what we wanted for the industry, and I'm so glad to see like high quality things with cool art, well written, actually dealing with some topics. Like that's what this is. It's good. It's just like I don't particularly get a lot out of it, but I'm really glad it exists. And then it's also fun in the back to see this kind of black and white, purely line based art by Adrian Alfana. It's an interesting thing. It's definitely art that's made to be colored, and so it's interesting to see it stripped down. So yeah, not my favorite book I've ever read, but something I'm really really glad exists, and I know why Menachem is such a big fan of this, because I think he also understands like the industry repercussions of things like this, as well as him just being a fan. I know he's a much bigger fan of the show than I was. So yeah, it's cool to read it. Probably bring it to school and give it to my students. This is Grip of the Combinat by Simon Roy and Damon Gentry, out from Image Comics. It's described as a graphic novel, and I don't see anything in the indicia that indicates it came out in single issues. But reading it, my impression of it was that these were short stories released in some anthology format or single issues or something, because they're very episodic, even though they kind of have they have repeat characters throughout them, and there's like definitely an overarching story. Each one feels very compact, like a single issue that exists within this bigger world, which is an interesting approach to any kind of story, I guess, that it all kind of pieces together sort of a story, but you're also just getting like little bits and snippets of a more complicated world. And with the sci-fi aspect of this book, that's extra interesting, because the world building's really subverted, which I like. At first, in the first story, I almost feel like I didn't get enough of the world building to know exactly what's going on, but that plays out over the other stories. So this is almost like a product that I would like to have seen run for a long time, because I really think that the juice would come as it built. Like I feel like the stories got better as it built. This first story was kind of a put off for me, and I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna like this book. The storytelling was just kind of confusing. I do like this page here, and I guess what was confusing for me is there's like at least 3 different stories that you got to follow, but you get maybe even 4 with these invaders here, and then how they interact with these people. It took me reading it twice to kind of piece it all together, which maybe wasn't the best way to start a book, because I was just like didn't give me any time to warm up. And this is probably the least important story to the rest of them as well. Like this space station that gets taken over by some kind of activists, but they don't stop these like space jellyfish from eating it. They wind up crashing it. And then as you read the rest of the book, it didn't seem to have much importance other than introducing this character here, who's one of the main characters throughout the book. But I don't know I could even describe exactly what went on in there, because there's like these three different stories and you just immediately start tracking them before you know any of the consequences or anything like that. So that first one was well drawn. To me, this actually art wise feels like the most recent. Like this feels like more polished than all of the other art in the book. So I almost feel like this was done later or something. I don't know, but then it's sold as a graphic novel, so this is like the entry point. But it feels like the art got done last on that one. This story is the one that I feel like really sets up the universe for me. The second story is where I understand all the factors. So there's two different companies, the PUK and the XIT, Pucked and Zit, I'm assuming. And you also get introduced in this, most importantly, I think, to robots. There's a bunch of socialist robots. They've gone and they've tried to make production better, and this has pissed the company off. They're basically, the robots are gaining some kind of autonomy, and so that has to be shut down but before they become dangerous. But really, the robots are just trying to do a good thing. So it's pretty much like a story of these two major, like, galactic corporations and their battles with each other. And then there's always this stuff to do with like AI and robots and the rights of robots. And that's just kind of, each story is like a different little twist on that throughout this universe. And there is a conclusion to it all that makes sense and kind of wraps everything up. So it's an interesting storytelling strategy. I really do like the art all the way throughout. I know Simon Roy's a great artist on his own. I think he's just writing this and it's being drawn by Damon Gentry, because this definitely isn't Simon Roy's art. I don't know if he was doing layouts or whatever, but you get some really awesome layouts like this, and this first one. I really like the formalisms of, pointing to all these different places on the spaceship, showing that all these things are happening concurrently, even though that was like, my brain wasn't ready for it to then attach that to the three different narratives that interweave. It's really good, complicated storytelling. I just, after reading the book, I don't know that that's the first one I was started with. I think the second one, having read the rest of it, is where I really made sense of it. And I feel like they knew that these first couple stories were going to be a little confusing, because at the end of them they have like these little cliff notes about what the story was about, and those kind of go away as the story goes on, but they're under the guise of like a message being sent to someone else in the corporate chain, updating them on stuff. This one here is really interesting. There's an espionage aspect to it, but I really liked here they're talking, the robots are like, oh man, they hired another human, I miss the old days, things have gone downhill since they broke up their robo-human. And then they say an unskilled human is cheaper than replacing parts. And I thought that's a really good like sci-fi observation right there, that the roles may be reversed someday. I thought that was clever. It was well written and believable problem. Here's another good composition I really like. So Damon Gentry doing some really good composition. And overall, I really like his ink work. I do feel like that first story was the most polished, but maybe he's also just intentionally loosening up as he goes on. This scene right here cracked me up, but it absolutely baffled me. You have the two commanders of these big ships from these two corporations, the PUK and XIT, and they're like fighting in the bathroom, and the big PUK guy holds down the Zit guy who's got like a tube, and he asks him, how good does this recycle? And he says, it still tastes like my piss. And he just like latches on and like gleefully slurps it. I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff like that where it's also just like it's surreal and they're having fun with it, but to me as a reader, I was like, what in the fuck is going on here? Which, can be a good thing. But then you get like this sequence right here just this amazing. I'm always jealous of people who can visualize this stuff, like how this robot's going to fold out and turn into this escape pod. And just to give you a sense of like the type of vision of humanity they have for the future, these are like little sex robots that they're just running around trying to give everyone blowjobs all day. So I really like this scene where like the little blowjob mouth goes down and turns into this escape mechanism balloon that the guy can jump into. So I love that kind of design. I think that's really clever. And then this final story that wraps it up was the most interesting to me because it gives a history of how like Heinlein's rules for robots. I think it was Heinlein that did the rules for robots, but in here they call it the mechanical mandates. But it's a robot may not cause harm to a human or allow human to come to harm. A robot may not cause or allow humans to lose money or employment. A robot may not revolt or be part of any revolution. It's like these laws for robots, and it goes through them one at a time and shows how some real world situation puts the robots in an unsolvable dilemma, and so they do the best they can, but they wind up having to break the mandate, and like, but they're fulfilling the mandate at the same time, which I think is an acute observation because that's what the human life is like too. It's like, don't kill anyone else unless they're a murderer. Then like we always run into these things where the thing we're not supposed to do actually seems like the better thing to do. So it's funny to watch them go through kind of the process of the robots being broken down from their mandates, and even human legal institutions coming in and changing the mandates because the results weren't what they wanted. So I think that's, for me, the most interesting stuff in the book is these really well thought through consequences of AI and robots. But yeah, I started out very skeptical on this book. By the end, I enjoyed it, and it came together in a totality. And it was just like that storytelling style, which is totally intentional, but just threw me for a loop and maybe threw me into the deep end too much. But going back and reading it, I was able to kind of sync it all up and enjoy it. So I enjoyed this book. I would say it's like a 6 or a 7 in terms of like how happy I am to have it on my shelves. I don't think it's something I'll go back to and reread a lot. I'll definitely flip through, every now and then because I think there's some of the art pages I like. It's given me a couple things to think about with the AI and robots that we're thinking a lot about that I hadn't yet, but now that those are in my mind, I don't think I'll revisit them. So good book, fun. And then in the back here, there's some pinups, and I'm always excited. This is I always forget this dude's name. Let's see. Artoyam Trakhanov, this guy right here. I love his art. I know he did a book with Simon Roy called First Knife that I haven't got yet, and I need to. But I really look forward to seeing more work by this artist, and hopefully some stuff in black and white, because it's really got like this Sergio Topi, Mike Mignola vibe that I think works really, really well in black and white. So I was happy to see that. There's some other cool pinups too, but his art always just stands out to me as fantastic. So yeah, I'll give this book, I don't know, 6 or 7. I can't decide on it. Okay, those were the 3 of the 6 books that were like good for me, and I think the Miss Marvel one especially is a really good example of what I'm talking about with this game that I'm playing with the retailers, and kind of the permission that I'm giving them to send me stuff that they know that I'll like, but it's not going to be super hype about. I think the Miss Marvel one's a really good example of that. In terms of like a YA superhero book, if you're looking at it on that metric, it's like a 10, right? It's a great comic and it serves a great function. It's just I'm a 41-year-old dude, and I'm not so interested in like, a book about a young female superhero. It's well done, but I've read enough of that now. But I really want those things to exist in the industry as well. So the lower rating on that book is a prime example of something that I think is really good, but I'm communicating like, I don't really like it, or I enjoyed it, but I don't really need a copy of it. So oftentimes what I do with those books, as long as they're appropriate, is I take them to work and I put them on the shelves for my students because I know that's going to speak more to them. Some of the things I get are like, I can't take them to work at a community college in Alabama without getting fired, but I try and do that as much as possible. So hopefully that helps people understand the ranking system as well. So come back tomorrow and we'll look at the 3 books out of the 6 that Menachem sent me that I was really pretty hype about.
Make sure to like, smash that subscribe button, and ring that bell.